Hi, this is Ken Mary, and you're listening to Focus on Metal. So focus, people, focus.
Focus on metal.
Hey, Metalheads, Scott Thompson here, welcoming you to another week of that, which we refer to as Focus on Metal. So last week, Jay and I were diving into all things music consumption and how everything's related to that, and just kind of a lot of soapboxing going on between us and some rabbit holes and all that other good crap that used to happen way back 10 years ago on classic Focus on Metal. Or should I say Focus on Classic Metal, because way back at the beginning of the show actually was split into two things. So it was always Focus on Metal, but you had a week of Focus on Extreme Metal with Dario and Mandy, and then the next week would be Jay and I with Focus on Classic Metal. So if you hear him referring back about that stuff, that's what that's all about. But we were always known to go down rabbit holes and have long discussions and all that stuff, and you know, between being music fans and bandmates and all of that, long history there. So that kind of leads to some lengthy discussions between Jay and I, and that is the case again this week as we go into part two of our discussion on music consumption and its overall effect on the music industry and new bands and just all kinds of stuff. If you didn't listen to part one, you probably want to listen to part one so you understand what's going on here. And at the end of part one, we were talking about the fact of vinyl, and in some cases, if you didn't have an auto flip tape player, that tapes, you know, you had to listen to them, you had to be ready to flip them over, and the fact that that level of attention, of course, made you consume the music differently because you had to actively be listening to it. It was more than just background. That's pretty much where we had left off. I cut it off there at an hour. We have almost another hour of discussion this week as well. So with that in mind, I'm going to shut the hell up and finish rolling the rest of the conversation between Jay and I on the music industry and consumption.
You just got the nail on the head. Pay attention. And by the way, when you stood in line for an hour and a half and then I drive an hour to get to a record store and maybe to go to 4 record stores because what you were looking for wasn't there, when you finally got that item in your hand that you were looking for and went home and listened to it, you paid friggin' attention to it because you hunted for it. It took you forever. Probably cost you 6 times the amount of, train tickets and fuel and everything else to get to where you had to go to get it, tolls and everything else. And I don't know how many times I came up empty going to stores, and came home deflated. I couldn't find something.
Yeah.
And when online came out, I still hated it. I still balked it forever until one day, I forget what I was even looking for. I spent $1 gazillion, half a day driving around, New Hampshire and Massachusetts, trying to find whatever I was looking for. Went home, was on Amazon. I ordered it. It was in the house 2 days later. And I wasted an entire day, gas mileage, everything. And that was my flip of when I stopped going to stores.
Yeah.
When the stores didn't have the stuff I was looking for anymore.
Yeah, and they are, I mean, some of them are getting better. I think with the definite resurgence in vinyl that I think stores are carrying it. But what's weird too is, we talked about it at the very beginning. I talked about metal fans as being one of the genres of music where you can count on metal fans wanting physical product. The other weird one is you have a lot of younger buyers, millennials and stuff, that buy albums but not to play them. They're buying the limited vinyl so they can have it and hang it on their wall or something. It's fucking bizarre. So that pushes a trend in vinyl pressing as well. So a lot of vinyl pressing plants are like way deadlocked on stuff because they're producing stuff that no one will even goddamn play, which sucks.
So I have 2 albums hanging on my wall right here in front of me. My son bought both of them for me because he knew I was a big fan of both of these things, and he said, Dad, what are the colorful albums that you really liked when you were growing up, blah, 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 and I said Pretty Maids, Future World was one, and I gave him a list of a bunch. So you want to take a guess what I have hanging? I have 2 of them. You want to take a stab at what I have hanging up in front of me? You're thinking, you're never going to guess.
I'm probably never going to guess.
All right, one of them's a Kiss album, I'll give you that. So we'll take a stab. What do you think I have in front of me?
Rock and Roll Over.
That's the one.
Yeah. And
an Iron Maiden one.
And I have, just so you know, I have 2 albums in frame on my wall.
Yeah.
One of them is Rock and Roll Over. And it's because I have 3 copies of it. So
Okay.
the one that's on the wall was actually Jeff's copy.
Oh, okay, cool.
And I've got like some backstage passes and stuff within that one. But but I've got like 3 copies, including the rare Paul with the teardrop coming out of his eye copy. I actually have one of those.
No, mine's a reprint, obviously. By the way, people that don't know, Jeff was the drummer in the band we were in together. Why not? Yeah. But the second one, guess what? The Iron Maiden album. So this is a no-brainer. What do you think it is?
Shit.
Actually, it's not a no-brainer, now that I think of it.
There's a lot of good covers there. Probably not Somewhere in Time, because that's like got a lot going on within a frame.
No, not that one.
Is it Power Slave?
No, it's not. It's actually Number of the Beast.
Okay.
But looking back at it, of all the albums, I think Killers might have been the best one for an album cover. But you knew I was you Run to the Hills, and you knew Number of the Beast, so he was all happy he got it for me. But those are the 2 I have hanging up. That's it. Never listened to, never opened, tags on them and everything. So
actually, now that I think of it, I think I've got 4 copies of Rock and Roll Over. Because they did a whole remaster anniversary colored vinyl one. I've got 4. Yeah.
Too many. That's a lot.
I've got a fuckload of vinyl. Yeah. If I have to move out of here, this is going to suck to move it all. So it's kind of like with all the CDs you had.
Well, again, so you and I both went through divorces, and I lost half of my physical media during divorce, and the ex never listened to an album for the 21 years we're together, but, had to have half, and that's fine. That's the way that goes. But in the meantime, I literally converted everything to MP3. So I now have half downstairs that I kind of wish I didn't even have, just because it's just too much room, and I physically have like 2,000 CDs sitting downstairs. That's way too many for... I live with an iPod that's 1.5 by 3.5 by, I don't know, quarter inch thick, that has everything I own on it within reason,
Yeah.
So,
well, I like the, I've got a fuckload of CDs too, and I like the album art, I like the liner notes, all of that stuff too. So, and then some of them, I've got like all the enhanced Maiden ones with the videos and shit like that on them. So, yeah, I'm still, like Richie says, I'm a physical media whore.
Yeah, over the years, I think you've turned into more than me. I mean, I had an obsession at one point. I'd walk into Best Buy or Circuit City was actually big for me because they were like $1 cheaper, and I'd literally walk with 17 CDs at a time, like $300.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a sickness I had back in the day, and I listened to all of it. And it wasn't all metal, obviously. Some was, new age or jazz or soundtracks from movies or whatever. But the whole hodgepodge. But I literally would buy 17 at a whack or 15 at a whack. I mean, I go to the counter and the woman would look at me like, are you friggin' crazy? And the ex-wife would look at me like, you friggin' crazy? And I was, I was crazed.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Yeah, it's one of my obsessions between that and wait till you see how many guitar pedals I have now. You'll be like, what the fuck?
Oh, geez. Yeah, you were always big into the gear, too.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's closing in on 400 right now. So.
Oh, fuck me. Hey, you got to start playing again if you're not,
It's like, I've got all awesome stuff, but it's an obsession.
Yeah, I've kind of lost that obsession a long time ago, but mostly because we stopped playing. Once I had my son, my priorities changed in life, and haven't really gotten back to being the old me. Doing the things that I used to do prior to him. He's 26 now, and obviously some of the things I won't do anymore, like be an ice hockey goalie and play sports like I used to do for obvious reasons. But I survived the years of not getting injured. Why risk it now? So I wouldn't do it now, but. The stuff like the guitar and photography, I'd like to have that creep back in again. So it'd be fun.
Yeah. I think, when we talk about going back to, consumption, I think that a lot of people, our age, I think people in their 40s, probably even some people in their 30s and stuff, you're seeing more and more people are having the need to get back to physical media. I think a lot of the polls show that as well, that people want to get back to that, and they see in the vinyl, the kind of the warmness, the mechanical nature of it, all that, I think has triggered something like innately in people's brains, which is great. And I even see, even some younger people that are just really interested in in actually having, physical media again and playing it and collecting it and understanding it and stuff like that. So I think it is cool. And I'm hoping that some of that will help to turn around and maybe, some of that money goes back into record company coffers from things that are more than just catalog, and maybe they start to do more investment. Maybe it's a pipe dream. I don't know whether record companies ever go back to development or not, but you never know.
That's a pipe dream. So let me tell you a story of my son. So when he was about maybe 10 back in 2007, he liked songs, like individual songs, stuff I was listening to, especially, heavy metal songs. He knew the tracks. So he started wanting to put those on his, whatever he had, I think it was an iPod or whatever that equivalent was back in the day. So he had something like that. I was like, no, dude, you want to put the whole album? He's like, no, I need just like that song, Dad. So we had a conversation about why that song was on the album, why that song was number 4, and how that fit in the whole sequence of the entire story and the entire feel of the album and why the album feels the way it does. And he didn't grasp the concept right away. And then he got into Pink Floyd. And he got into Pink Floyd. I bought him the entire box set. And he listened to every one of those albums from the beginning to the end, and he got such into it, the band members and everything, and he became a nut job to the point where I ended up telling him, dude, you got to get your own music. This music is in the past. You got to get your own stuff so you can talk to your friends about it and have things coming out in your era, which was like Imagine Dragons and Avenged Sevenfold and things like that, right? So things that era. So eventually he did kind of go that direction too, and that's why he's such a musical nut job now with everything he has and listens to. But that concept wasn't in him of listening to an album. So anybody that's out there that doesn't listen to actual albums, I urge you to pick up whatever your favorite, actually not your favorite song, because you'll never unhear that one song taking over the whole album, but pick up an album and actually listen to it from beginning to end. And hopefully it's an older one that's, 45 minutes or under. And you might experience that music very differently, than just picking a track and having it in a playlist of 400 other songs that you listen to that you jumble up. It's very different. And why the presentation of albums and tracks and side 1, side 2 is on purpose. And you should listen to it that way. That's my soapbox. I'm getting off it.
No, it's very true, though. There is some decade dependence on that as well, because you do have, especially in the 80s, you had a lot of bands where the producer had a lot of say with songs, and it was kind of like, okay, this is, you're definitely putting this on because that is your single. And that's what I care the most about. And maybe there's a follow-up single, probably the ballad, so I care the most about that one next. And then everything else, I don't really care about that as much. So you kind of have, you do have albums where you may have 1 or 2 good songs, and then the rest of it you're like, great, this is like 30 minutes of shit with maybe 2 good songs, or maybe even not even that. It's 2 songs I know in 30 minutes of shit. But hopefully you get one that is an album that soup to nuts you mostly like, and kind of see how, there's a lot of variation here. There's a theme in here I didn't realize, things like that. So yeah.
No, I agree. I mean, we're very fortunate. I consider myself extremely fortunate to grow up when I did. I had the residual of the 70s still there. Early 80s was coming in with, everything was classified as metal, which is then later subgenred out, to hair metal or whatever else, melodic rock or whatever. But, it was heavy metal, and then late 80s into the early 90s, we hit the grunge era, and then after that, I don't know what happened. I really don't. I mean, late 90s, early 2000s, the power metal came out, and after that, I really don't know what happened.
I mean, there are some bands now that I can say you pick it up and listen to the entire album, and you won't be disappointed. So one that comes to mind immediately is Five Finger Death Punch.
Okay.
Every one of their albums, you put that on. It's funny. And the reason that one comes to mind is my girlfriend had asked maybe 2 months ago. She's like, can you bring over some of the Five Finger? And I'm like, yeah. And of course I bring this giant stack. She's like, it figures. You have every goddamn album. I'm like, yeah. And so her intent was, put it into the Jeep, load it in the hard drive, listen to the album, and then go to the next one, then go to the next one. And she got to the first one, and she is like in love with the entire album to the point where she's like, yeah, just bring the other ones back home from now, because I don't know how long it's going to be till I actually decide I'm going to be able to listen to something else. She's like, I'm still absorbing every one of these songs in order, one right after the other. And that's what all of their albums are like. You put those on and beginning to end, you're going to like the entire album. Another one that's a newer band that's like that is Volbeat. Same deal. You're going to get a lot of different variety, but if you like, the sound of Michael Paulson's voice, they're another one that there isn't there's no filler on the album. So that's good ones.
So I'm going to you just hit a memory here or something I wanted to touch base on, kind of off topic than of the media, but remember the band Fifth Angel?
Yep.
Okay, so have you heard their 2 newer albums?
Yes, and we even had I think for the first one we had Ken on the show. Okay.
Honestly, those 2 albums, a shocker, because you know how hard I am on a new vocalist.
Mm-hmm.
You know how hard I am when the vocalist leaves a band. And holy shit, the 2018 release, that was ridiculous. I mean, to me it was... I'm still shocked over how good that was.
Yeah, and I remember when those came out, and Richie was like, yeah, Fifth Angel, and I said, that was like one of Jay's favorite bands was Fifth Angel. Yeah. He was like, really? I'm like, oh, yeah. I'm like, that was huge for him.
Yeah, and I was very bummed at first that, Ted Pilot wasn't singing, and I kind of made some noise about it, friends or whatever, and then I heard it. I'm like, yeah, it's not Ted Pilot, but honestly, his voice wouldn't have done this music the justice I think that was given. Then the new album came out, even another new singer. I'm like, fuck, and I listened to this actually not as good as the last one, but I mean, only 1% less than the last one, so it was fantastic also. I was very, very thrilled for both of them, and I'm very excited if they have another release to hear it again, hear something new, but I mean, there's a band that I thought was dead, and boom. And the bands that are dead that put albums out, usually the albums suck, and this was not the case. So I was very, very excited.
Yeah. And
it's a rarity. That's why I bring that up.
We need to call up Vic Hicks and ask him what the hell's going on with his band.
If you want to know, I talk to him often, actually. So they are working on some new stuff. May not see the light of day. There's some health issues within the band. So, so they're having some issues there. But, you got the Full Metal Jacket album, right?
Yes.
What do you think of that?
I thought it was good. I wasn't I didn't relate to it. Let's put it this way. I didn't relate to it as well as I related to Old Shock Paris.
Of course, I understand that completely. It's because Old Shock Paris doesn't exist the way it did, and I'm with you 100%. But I thought it was still a really solid effort, to be honest. I wasn't disappointed overall. It was very good. But I hear you saying I was missing that dual guitar kind of, just that rawness of the first 2 albums especially. But I thought for being produced, 30 years after the fact, it was more modern, and it didn't, how do I say it, it wasn't a letdown. Let's put it that way. I was very excited about it. They are working on some new stuff, and I hope they can get it out, but who knows. Yep, so I'll let him know that you were interested in knowing what's going on. Hey, I'm all for. I wish Laz Rocket would put something new out that's worth hearing too. So
you never know.
Another one of those bands. Again, Scott, I'm going to say it. This day and age, you can record at home so easily, and it wouldn't cost that much. These guys already have the equipment. They already have the guitars and drums and everything else. Just investing in the recording gear, which, as you've mentioned, is coming down in price pretty significantly.
And it's the fire to do it too. I mean, even I've got killer software. I've got more incredible gear than I had from before, and a lot of it still is like getting the fire to do it, because I spent so many years of doing it with sitting down with Jeff. He puts a beat, boom, I'm getting a riff, we're rolling, get the rest of the band together, construct it, and it's different when you're by yourself, and it's, at least for me, it's a lot harder when I don't have somebody to play off of, even though I've got some incredible programs for programming drums and putting it into the best world, studio rooms in the world and all that stuff. It's still, it's difficult, especially when you're used to doing it with other people.
Yeah.
Which is kind of like why my output has been, shit. And then it's like, is your audience still there and stuff like that? And, even, you saw, I don't know if you saw any interviews that they did back a few years ago. I can't think of his name now. The guy who was the lead singer for Shark Island. And, he talked about kind of, being ripped off and kind of just losing a lot of the, why the fuck am I bothering to do this anymore and stuff. And, here's a guy who was talented and just kind of just not really kind of feeling the love anymore. So it can be difficult.
All right. You unpacked a few things, and again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You do it for one of two reasons, because you love doing it or you want to make the money. So the people that are jaded, that have tried making it for the money and all that kind of stuff, if their heart's not in it to just make music because they love it for themselves, and if no one heard it but them, they should be happy with it, then they shouldn't be recording it. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I'll pull the guitar out and I'll sit with you and I'll run things by you. I don't care if no one hears it but you and I. I don't care if it goes nowhere. I don't care if I don't care if it costs me money to make it. As long as I have something that I've done that I can listen to myself, I am psyched. I don't give a shit if no one hears it.
Yeah.
I really don't. Yeah. Never have, to be honest. It's always been about, I've always wanted to just do what I like for me, and if someone else likes it, great. And that's just the way. When you start doing your music for someone else, I think you're going to lose interest real quick. You know?
I mean, that's what killed Peter Frampton.
Yeah,
he was writing for himself, and then all of a sudden he gets the big hits, and unconsciously he starts to write for the masses. Suddenly he falls out of love of writing songs, and he doesn't write as good songs anymore, and it's like, shit, I stopped writing for myself, and he'll tell you that.
Well, he knows the answer. I mean, that's just it. Again, this is, if I was to step into a studio, your home studio would be a home studio at this point. That way you're not worried about $8 million an hour going down the tubes,
When Rick's bass blows apart on the first song,
and the
whole day you're paying for.
Quite honestly, I don't remember it costing a lot of money to go in the studio back in the day, and we did it. And, I don't remember the exact specifics, but it wasn't earth-shattering from what I recall. It was money, and from my perspective, again, for me personally, I'd rather put a little money of my personal money into stuff to get a better quality product out that lasts forever. So here I am 30 years later, and I got, an album that we did together that obviously has some flaws, and I would have liked to have personally made a little bit, or tried to make it better. I'm not sure if we could have, but I would have liked to have tried instead of feeling rushed in the studio.
Yeah.
I felt very rushed, and the creativity doesn't work well with me being rushed. That's just me personally, so I can't speak for you guys. So that was, again, we all go in, we're experiencing what we experience going in the studio. There's, someone's worried about money, someone's worried about gear, someone's worried about whatever they're worried about, who knows, and it wasn't, we weren't firing on all the same cylinders, so to speak, also, Because I know as a band, had we just played as a band, I think we would have performed better, and the studio, granted, it wouldn't have stopped Rick's bass from blowing up or other flaws and things, and ping-ponging and stuff like that we had to do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Paul's studio really also wasn't set up to do, full band in the room either, so we had to kind of do the multi-track.
Mm-hmm. I do remember. I mean, it wasn't terrible by any means. It was fun. I just felt rushed. The bottom line is, if I have one complaint about the whole thing, I don't care that we actually did individual tracks. It was I felt rushed. That was the, I felt like the clock ticking was always in everybody's mind, and that's not good when you're trying to be creative. Again, this is the whole home experience now. I go to your house, bring a few beers, we cook on the grill, whatever we do. We make it a day or a week or whatever it is, and we're doing it several sessions, and there's no stress other than, sitting down doing it. There's no money off anybody's back per hour, $800 an hour for a studio or whatever. That's not the problem anymore.
Yep. No, that's true.
So I think when you can take your time, I think you can be more creative. Unfortunately, probably too creative. You can say you're never done, so to speak. You're always working. That's
the other part, and that's kind of the other element now is, when you go back and you look at, I'll use the Beatles, even though it's not metal, but the part of the Beatles and their sound was because of the limitations of recording. That is, you only had X number of tracks. You had to make decisions and then go, yep, this is how that part's going to go. Blend it with the other one, move on. And as you're recording, everything was a sequence of decision points. And you decided, you committed, and you moved on. Now, that's one of the things, and it's great that you have 1 million tracks to work with, but you also have the curse of 1 million tracks because you essentially don't have to commit. You can always reamp something. You can try something 18 different ways and select which one you want. So then you start to have the endless stuff. So there's kind of there's got to be like the middle ground. So like I know that when I was working with Dario on the multi-chaos stuff and I was doing bass tracks for him, that he was shocked that it wasn't parts. It was one bass track beginning to end. I'm like, no, That's how I play. I'm making a decision. I listen. I figure out what needed to get played for the bass, and I played it beginning to end, one shot. And if you look at everything as I was mixing it for him, most of everybody else had all kinds of different things that were getting comped together and stuff like that. So having a digital audio workstation and having thousands of tracks, yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff, but it can also lead you to do too much stuff as well. So, it's been getting into more of the, making commitments, making decisions, and trying to get back to some of the old school stuff that because people will ask, like, oh wow, why does that sound so good? Even why does the podcast have a certain sound that like sounds really good? And it's like, well, because I've got a whole bunch of outboard analog gear that it runs into first, like a traditional studio, and the only thing that's digital is the interface and the final mix down. So the analog gear makes me have to make decisions hard and fast. I'm printing to that sound as opposed to adding shit at the end. And so, there's different methodologies, but I just think a lot of times too, there's just so much available. People kind of get lost. So, I think if we got together, it would be more like, well, let's try to go back to how we had to do shit on tape. And that kind of lends itself to a path that I think makes some cooler stuff.
So I'm going to give you a few albums by name that I would like to make an album that sounds like this. One would be Axe Offering from 1981. The other one would be Q5, Steal the Light from 1985. And the other one would be Air Race, Shaft of Light. I think that was 83 or 84. I think it was 84.
Yeah, I've got the... I think I got the...
you probably have all three of them. All three of those are
I got
just...
the promo copy of the Air Race one, now that I think of it, because I used to play it on my metal show.
You dick. It's a great album. But, these are... Well, two of them are heavy metal, really. One's not as metal. But actually, they're all hard rock to metal, right? But that's the kind of just... it's just guys playing. They got through the tracks, shorter albums. There's no over-processing there. It's just straight up rock and roll. And that's how I believe songs should be on an album. 36, 38 minutes, 10 tracks, 3 minutes long each, whatever, 4 minutes, whatever, and just straight up guys playing without 17,000 overdubs.
Yeah.
That's me personally. That's how I'd like to make an album. So if you can kind of stick with that mindset, the riffing, the vocalization, just getting the tracks done, I think you can make albums.
Yeah. No, that's very true. That's kind of how I look at it is you may add a little bit of like, I've got a really nice guitar synth now. You could, if you need to put an accent or something, you could, but it's like, okay, put a guitar track, maybe you double it so you get a good left-right separation, and then you have the same thing for the other guitar, and you kind of create a good stereo feel for everything, but you don't do a million things in there, and you keep it simple. And then that way there you don't have competing frequencies as well. So, when I'm mixing, I don't have to spend, a week with like subtractive EQ to get everything to sit right.
Yeah, that's another segment we're going to do, the sonics of music these days, right? So
yes.
Keep that one on the back burner.
Yep.
But, yeah, see, that's the whole point, right? So, again, it's how we consume the media. You and I come from a late 70s to 80s era of music, and anybody that's listening to this, go pick up any album from the 70s and 80s, rock or metal, early. I'm talking like mid-70s to maybe 83 to 85, and they all kind of have that certain vibe about them, that certain sound, and that's what that's what I grew up loving. I'm sure you probably very similar, so that's why I compare everything today, even though I don't really mean to, I just compare it to how I grew up in those same bands. You buy I don't know, Exodus album from 85, I expect them to sound similar, but they don't. And that's actually good and bad, Actually, I shouldn't have picked them because I like them better now. But bands like Testament, for example, I like them better in the 80s and 90s. I like that. They were riffing more. It was different sound altogether. Now everything's just fat and bombastic. And I like them, just not the same, and that's the best way I could describe it. So listeners now go pick up, if you're not familiar with the era, era between late 70s, early 80s, go grab albums from that era and listen to them. They're fantastic.
That they are. Absolutely. I think this thing was a good topic, and And we went down some traditional old school focus on metal rabbit holes, which is fine because that's what we used to friggin' do. So why not? Why not do it again?
Oh, Jay's back. Oh no, rabbit hole Jay. Well, the thing is, because I don't talk to you often, and I don't get a lot of people that are passionate about music, especially my era of music around me.
Yeah.
So that's why I go off on a tangent with you. I don't get to do it often, and this is 10 years pent up at this point. So. I got my son to talk to, and he's my son, so we'll leave it at that. Very, very great conversations, but, we've come from different eras of music.
Yeah, so. And it's very similar. Richie comes down, and it's like, yeah, he's got, stuff charged up from the week and what he's been thinking about or whatever. I mean, now it's kind of been, longer stints, but it's the same thing. And now he gets down, and he's got, all the shit he wants to talk about, which is great. But what's cool with him, too, is that it's that, you and I have a very, American-centric viewpoint of it. So he just kind of adds the whole oh, you mean that didn't even happen in Europe or shit like that. So which is good, but it's the same kind of thing though of shit, I need to talk about this with somebody, and damn it, there's nobody around that I can talk to about it. So and that's that's the basis for what this show was founded on too. I do remember that, and we did a lot of actually when we first started, of course, we had the two different styles of podcasts. Mm-hmm. You have the heavier side, and then we're the classic side. And I got to be honest, I wasn't into the music of the heavier side at all. It just wasn't my thing. And what they talked about, I just wasn't into it. I didn't know it, didn't understand it. It wasn't part of my life. That's why I gravitated towards our side more. And I'm not saying it was bad. It wasn't. It just wasn't what I was familiar with. So yep. There's too much. You can't listen to everything. You can't be into everything, No, you can't. And there is some stuff. I do listen to, I really like Arch Enemy. That would have been, with Dario and Mandy on their side with extreme metal and, not on our side of it. But it's I like that. But is there a lot of that stuff that I like? No, there's kind of just very certain bands that within that genre that I like. And I'm still more into kind of the progression that I went on. So, which is what I usually want to consume.
I grew up with, my mom and my stepdad listening to 8-tracks in the car, and a lot of them were, Boston, the Eagles, Led Zeppelin, and Black Sabbath. I remember those four very specifically, So that's kind of what I grew up in the car when it wasn't the radio, because it was almost always radio, because as you know, 8-track players almost never work correctly. They're always eating tapes, so more often than not, the radio was on. But I just remember that growing up, so of course that's the avenue I went in my life. My mom was country music, which is exactly why I never liked country in the 70s, in the 80s rather. But that being said, nowadays it's country's more like rock, and they're out there trying to make their money, making their mark with the songs the catchy songs that are out there. Yeah, I can explain.
Yeah, no, they have gotten more rock centric. They're more riff, more guitar bass, more than anything else.
Right.
They're very produced. What's funny is that you had a lot of rock musicians that have moved into Nashville, and so you kind of have a lot of a mix in the scene now, and a lot more of that influence getting in. And so, yeah, I think you see that bearing out in kind of what the modern country at least.
One band I don't think we talk about or have talked about much is the band Keel. And the reason why I thought of them is because, Ron Keel went off and did some country stuff, among other projects he's done. But, I was very disappointed when he went off and did Ronnie Lee Keel. It wasn't terrible. I wanted another good Keel album. It has nothing to do with how good or bad his country was. It was just I wanted another Keel album, I thought, because they were a great band. They were fantastic for a bit, and then they kind of floundered a bit, in my opinion. But, it is what it is. So I'm sure the record companies probably had a lot to do with their demise, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, when they chucked everybody out. Yep.
It's just they get into that whole wall of vocals. They were whole that the melodic rock kind of thing. They were really the Keel album '87 was. I love that album. It was and the Right to Rock, fantastic. I loved that first 3 or 4 albums actually, and then they kind of floundered and they. I don't know, whatever. Stopped there with that, but I love them, And then they tried too hard. I think something happened. But anyway, him going to country and then Saber Tiger and whoever knows what else he's done over the years. But I kind of lost sight of him some years back. But he was one of the crossovers for sure.
Yeah, no, he's still out there.
Yeah,
still doing stuff, metal cowboy and stuff. So yeah, he's still doing stuff.
Well, nothing wrong with it, if you get some touring and making money and stuff, so But yeah, that was. I mean, the media. I kind of wish everything was going through more channels, channels that were monitored differently. I think we'd have quote unquote better music out there. I hate to say that way because it's not how I really mean to say it.
Yeah, there was. I can't think of which. Might have been Ahmet Erdogan. I can't remember who said it, but they talked about as much as people complain about labels did serve as some modicum of quality control. And granted, they're not so much that anymore, but you did have labels that they kind of had their specialties, or at least a band that in a certain genre would like to get onto a certain label because that label would essentially understand them and stuff.
Right.
But they did overall at some point serve as some kind of quality control to what was actually getting recorded and released and all of that. And, that's not the case anymore. But now we have pretty much with all the ways people can just put stuff out on YouTube and stuff. And you're going to find great stuff on YouTube, and you're going to find what the fuck stuff on YouTube as well.
Oh, people are very creative. I got to say, I mean, there's so many. The creativity out there is amazing. So many people that can do so many great things. It's almost like it's too much. It's so much, and it's at your fingertips at all points in time. I can watch YouTube all night, or even buy Amazon albums all night long. There's so much out there. Mm-hmm. It's amazing and it's fun, but again, there's kind of miss just having a genre pop. I mean, there hasn't been a big push for a certain genre in a long time. You mentioned the record label and not understanding you. How about having Armored Saint on Chrysalis Records back in the day? I mean, that's like a big no-no. I mean, they didn't understand that band at all, which is probably one of the reasons why they weren't bigger than they should have been way bigger. That band should have been way bigger.
Yep.
Yeah, they just were not on the right label, period. But they were on, Combat Records or New Renaissance or, I don't know, Metal Blade for certain back then. They might have had more of a chance,
Yep. No, I agree.
Mm-hmm. They're already behind. The same thing with Fifth Angel on with CBS, wasn't it? I mean, give me a break. Not a metal label.
Right. No, I agree.
So some of the record labels, they were doomed from the start no matter what. Well, shouldn't they doom? We're going to get the promotions they needed and the push to get the sales, and to get out there.
Yep.
They didn't have the bandmates to go on tour with. I mean, not the label mates to go on tour with. It just wasn't there for some of those bands.
Yeah, definitely a lot of the label staff and things like that made a difference.
This is a piece of media that kids don't get. We talk about media, physical media. I mean, just being on a record label meant success or not. Depending which one you were on, depends on what record label mates you were on. Also, how much money the label had to promote you and put you on tour with these other bands. That was half your success.
Yeah.
Not like that's something no one even thinks about when they're listening to an album. Why that album was successful, or how it became successful, if that was even part of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, you just look at Van Halen, when that came out, a lot of people didn't even know that existed. And it really was getting that, the label was able to get them on the tours, get those people, get them playing live in front and going, holy shit, people started to buy the album. And that's what snowballed them into the well-deserved success that they had. But it was all about being on the right label at the right time. When they got 10 Templements, so they had somebody that was going to be there to be their advocate and push all of the other staff to do what they needed to do to properly market them and all of that. And that makes a huge difference, as opposed to, I'm sure that, Saint on Chrysalis, they were probably somebody's pet project, and, whether that person was well-liked or not made a difference as to whether or not anybody was going to do shit for the band.
Right. Luckily they survived, and in my opinion, still one of the better bands out there. But, they obviously didn't have that push at the time they needed it to be in the limelight at the right time. I'm not saying their albums weren't good. Their albums were great. They just weren't being pushed the right way at the right time.
Yeah.
That's sad. What can you do, right?
Yeah, no, can't reverse it. But yeah,
No.
Hey, the thing is, they're still there. John Bush can still sing his ass off. It's,
Yeah, that's actually amazing, too, by the way. You see a lot of bands that, they're still out there, and kind of some of them I wish they just stop. They really need to. I'm not going to say names because that'd be bad. But John Bush is not one of those guys. He can still sing, and he's still rock solid. The whole band behind him, it sounds like they're, 25 years old. They just get those songs crank them up one after the other, and they're fantastic. So, yeah, I'm still a huge fan.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, who are they with? I'm looking forward to seeing them with Queensryche.
Yeah, they were supposed to come around here last year with Wasp, and I guess Blackie Lawless was injured or hurt or something. And
hurt his back,
had to cancel the tour. And I hit up one of the guys in the band on Facebook, and I was like, why don't you guys go headline yourself? He never responded to that. I'm sure there's reasons why they couldn't, but the tour dates are already there. Just headline, Just take over or get another band to go with you. But whatever, they didn't do it.
Yeah, so, I'm looking forward to that. So hopefully that won't get canceled, and that'll be good to go see Saint.
Were they playing? They're playing out in Worcester, right?
The Palladium.
Yeah, that's right. I saw that on the schedule. Yeah, maybe I should go. It's just one of those things. I don't really like going to see live bands anyway, like, at that caliber, just because it's just a hassle overall. But, I prefer the little smaller, quaint nightclubs around here more. But I love that band, and I probably should see them. Well,
I mean, the Palladium is kind of small venue-esque, so it's, it's probably about the same. Maybe it's a little smaller than the Orpheum.
Oh, the Orpheum, God. I actually saw the original Headbangers Ball tour there. And I saw the follow-up with, who was it? There was Sabotage, Nuclear Assault, and, I'm drawing a blank on the last band. Hit me in a little bit. Anyways, Testament, yeah. Yeah, that was those three, I'm pretty sure. Year after that one. So I was very fortunate to see some good bands there.
Yep. Yeah, they're still usually bringing some good acts in there, which is cool.
There's another band I wish was still doing stuff, more often than not, is Nuclear Assault. They were pretty good at one point. Yeah,
well, I think Lilliker's kind of involved in a whole bunch of other crap, too, so that probably plays into it.
Yeah. What was it, Third World Genocide? That came out, 10 years ago maybe now? I like that one a lot. I'm surprised, late career album that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess we beat up the whole genre thing, I think.
We did. We made, I think, good work of that, where we've got a good hour and 45 minutes of beating up the genre.
Wow. A little too much. Oops, sorry for the rabbit holes.
We've had longer ones, so, yeah.
I'm sure.
It's good.
Just two guys talking music.
It's all good, and this should be. It's I don't know if I mentioned it in the last time we had you on, but it's good to have you back.
Yeah, good to be back.
I actually appreciate and really enjoy talking to a friend again, and I think also for listeners, I know you guys have been getting used to kind of went from weekly to bi-weekly. It's kind of like whenever. So I think between Jay and Richie, that maybe we can get back to some more frequent episodes again, which will be really good. It just means I have to get back to used to mixing on a very regular basis again. But for you guys listening, I think it'll be a good thing overall. And so you get a lot of new good discussions, some viewpoints, some of you people that are new and never really have heard Jay before. You get to hear another viewpoint on the show as well, so that's great. You lose nothing, you gain everything. So I think it's a good deal for everybody.
And ready? And in closing, for me anyway, we're talking about the media types and how things were so frequent in the past, 6 months to a year for albums, and you just kind of hit the nail on the head here. People are used to hearing an episode one a week, and you've gone every 2 weeks now or sporadically, maybe getting back to the traditional one a week what people like and enjoy. Maybe, again, the kick in the pants for the show is the same kick in the pants for how music should be made, in my opinion. So that's funny. Had to throw that in there. Yeah, of course, I'm putting all the burden on you having to mix a show. I'm sorry for that, but you get the whole point.
That's it. It's the show. It's the artwork. It's the show notes. It's the, yeah.
Yeah, I can alleviate some of that if you want to push it my way.
But yeah, that's good for this week. Again, yeah, great to be talking to you. I think that was a good topic and something that it was good. I'm glad we didn't wait. We kind of got into this one while the passion for it was still there. So that's good. And I think through the discussion, Jay kind of dropped some hints of some other upcoming discussions as well. So if you didn't catch them, go back, listen to the whole episode again. You've got another 2 hours to spare.
especially if you're sitting in traffic.
But I think there's lots of good stuff there. And, obviously, like Jay said, he's got 10 years of pent-up shit that he wants to talk about. So, okay, we'll talk about it.
Yeah, rock and roll. Sounds good to me.
All right, man. Good talking to you.
Have a good one.
And talk to you again soon.
All right, bye.
Hey. Yep, I told you that was going to be a long one, metalheads, but there you go. That's the wrap on the discussion that Jay and I had all about the current state of the music business and, in general, how people consume music, buy music, listen or not listen to music, and just some other rabbit holes about being in bands and other stuff in there as well. Always a good convo with Jay. Happy to have him back co-hosting on occasion with me. And I'm sure that as Jay gets back into the swing of things, that these conversations are going to be a little more focused and direct and on point. There's still going to be rabbit holes. That's just what we do. But it won't be as kind of rambling and broad-based as this one. So next week, if all goes to plan, I will be presenting to you a conversation I had with Darren Paltrowitz. He is the author of DLR book, How David Lee Roth Changed the World. He's also the guy who heads up the DLR cast, and I'm sure that during the conversation, find out every other thing that Darren does in the media out there. But it's a great book on David Lee Roth. It came out on January 1st. If you haven't gone and ordered it, then you should head up to, of course, Amazon carries it, or I'm sure a lot of other places carry it as well. But again, it's a DLR book, How David Lee Roth Changed the World. And I think reading it, you might even get some new or different impressions about David Lee Roth, and even some other, you might have some new notions about Diamond Dave. Definitely is a book that makes you think about his character and stuff. Or you might want to just wait until you hear the conversation that I'm going to have with Darren that, like I said, hopefully I'll bring to you next week and decide there whether you're going to buy the book. Also, speaking of Diamond Dave, another book that is coming out, I think in April, is going to be Van Halen at 50. By our friend and frequent guest, Martin Popoff. Martin has been doing these X-Band at 50 books, and he's done one on AC/DC. He's done one on Kiss. And unless I missed one, I think the VH1 is going to be his third one. And I don't know, maybe between now and then, maybe I'll be able to contact Martin again, have him back on the show to talk about Van Halen at 50, which I'm a little confused about. Just kind of like, where is he putting that found of Van Halen? Because you think, at least if I count it from Van Halen 1, this is not Van Halen at 50, but I'm sure Martin, as always, has an explanation for such things. And I'm also sure that knowing Martin, he is going to tell you exactly what his logic is behind that within the intro, because he tends to do that with every single book that he puts out. But for this week, that's it. There ain't no more. Stick a fork in it. This puppy is done. So for myself and everybody else here at Focus on Metal, have yourselves a great metal week. And until we talk to you again next time, as always, remember,
Focus on Metal.
Everything else is insignificant.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.